What is up? I'm Miguel Antonio, and you are listening to the Live and Create podcast. It's where I interview artists and entrepreneurs about what it means to live a great life and create great things. And before we jump into the podcast, I'd love for you to check out my band, Run With It. Here is a clip from our song, Ghost Like You.
I've been waiting for a ghost like you. I got these walls that you can walk on through. Your voice, it echoes down these empty halls. Your touch is soft, come and break my fall. I've been sleeping when the sun comes up. The days are torture without your touch. Wake up again to the light of the moon. I've been waiting for a ghost like you. You hold me, I'm fading, I gotta let go. Come and save me, take control. Are you my demon or my angel of gold? Is there a heaven you know? Is there a heaven you know? Now I'm waiting for a ghost like you. Now I've been waiting for a ghost like you.
Like what you heard, make sure you check us out at Run With It Band, at Run With It Band, everywhere you follow people at, or go to runwithitband.net. It'll take you to all the different links you want to go to, and there'll be a little button you can click for booking information. Now for today's podcast.
The Live and Create podcast.
Business on your own, but I'm curious for you, did it start like some people's stories start with they were in a band and then they started learning this, or was engineering where it started for you?
No, I was so I was in a band-ish. It was just me and a drummer and a bass player. And then the high school I went to had a ton of rappers. It was just kind of a fun, like, I didn't have the experience where like it was a bunch of people in bands in high school. It was like, because it was the era of like Linkin Park and all that. So it was always like guitarist, drummer, and then a rapper. And it just kind of ended up being the thing. And so this guy, essentially bought a day of like, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I must've been 16, bought a day of studio time in this studio in town. And they were going to do some tracks, and they're like, well, we have, like 4 extra hours, you and your drummer come in and then we'll lay some stuff. And I got in, and it kind of ages me, but in the era of VH1, like Behind the Music, with that amazing show. But like, I was the only experience of seeing a studio, and it was always just like this, like, what is, like, it was just an odd thing. But being in a studio and I could care less of what, like, I was actually playing. I was curious of what was happening on the other side of that glass. I was like, wait, what, how does this work? And then, reading like liner notes for CDs, like saying, oh wait, there's like engineers, producers, like what is all this? And then just seeing it was a career path of like, oh, you get paid to make records. Oh, that's amazing. And then when it was come time to figure out what I wanted to do after high school, I was like, well, I had all of the aspirations of being a touring, like progressive metal guitar player, band guy, obsessed with Dream Theater, all that fun stuff. But I was like, you know what, maybe I should find a way to make a living in case that doesn't work out. So just going a list of like careers. I knew I didn't necessarily want to be a music teacher. It just wasn't my vibe for sure. And I realized like, oh, you could go to school for making records. And even when I was in college, it was still like, that was always the backup plan. And then at some point it flipped to like, I love the technology. I love what you're able to do with the recording medium. And then also just working with all other art, like creative people. It could be the college I went to was a lot of jazz and classical, but if we're doing like weird experimental music or world music, it was just it was incredible to be able to craft all of those things. And I've absolutely fell in love with the process of making records, and then just the process of recording is just an incredible thing. Yeah,
that's awesome, man. So are you still drumming as well?
I'm a guitar player.
Guitarist.
You do not
mix that up.
Like me on drums. It doesn't make sense. Like I have all the rhythm in the world in my hands, but it does not translate to my feet at all. Like it's like, like I have interns down, like if I'm trying to show like different miking techniques, I'll get behind the drum kit. And again, makes zero sense how little rhythm I have in my feet. Hands for days. Right. We could, like funk riffs all day. No problem. Yeah, I still play guitar. I gig out occasionally, not a whole lot. I do a lot of session guitar work. And then I do music for sync licensing for like TV shows, movies,
nice.
and so yeah, I play a lot with that. Occasionally, if an artist I work with is having an album release, and they need another guitar player to, for that, I'll do like kind of the special things. But I've definitely taken a step back from the gig world, which can be very tough. With like late nights and setup breakdown, all that. It's, then if you're in like bars and clubs dealing with drunk people, it's like, no, I'm gonna stay in my air conditioned studio and, and deal with that.
No, I feel you. And we play out a lot.
Cool.
I'm loving more like the festivals, and we're doing like private events, those kind
That's
of things.
awesome. Yeah.
And we do some bar stuff, but there's certain ones now where it's like, I just don't even want to go back.
Sure.
Because the experience is not,
Right.
Some are really cool still, but
But then
not always fun.
There's also there's a 23-year-old band like that wants to do that. So like let them
Exactly.
hit that, yeah.
Well, and there's something to be said about the reps,
Yeah.
I think, for our band, a lot of us have, whether either together or with other groups, we've put in a lot of those reps and paid a lot of those dues too.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's a very real thing. Absolutely. Yep.
Now, when you first got out of school, what did it look like for you to start the actual business piece of it, like going out and recruiting and bringing people in?
Sure. So it took a while to build my own business. I got to intern at an amazing studio, and like somebody who I'm still I'll still talk to like once a year, who's in town, and like we'll have the long gear talk of we'll have an 8-hour conversation about a particular compressor and get real nerdy. It's a weird thing of like, okay, this older guy's like, and I'm talking to him until like 4 a.m, and then if it's just like, it's weird. Okay. But we're talking about compressors. But I was apprenticing with him for quite some time. And then he had a second studio that I was able to bring some clients to, and for less than what his rate was. So if the artist couldn't afford them, I was able to build up a little kind of client base there. I was actively gigging at the time, so I was making connections with a lot of musicians, and then the particular scene I was in ended up being a lot of musicians who went on to like do major tours. That's been over the years. Like I realized like my first 2 years post college was probably the greatest thing that could have happened to me as far as continued business. And then like as they rise up in the industry, in the touring world they're in, they end up bringing me back work, which is amazing. Then like finding other clients, and then either working out of like whatever apartment I was living in, or another studio that was in town. I made a relationship with a lot of other studio owners that I could just have a room rate and do that. I got linked in with a small label out of New York, so every once in a while I would go up and do some work there. And then at that time I was gigging, so I was still I would say like half of my income was like recording, mixing, engineering, and the other half was just either gigging locally or doing like being in the pit for like music theater shows, like out in random theaters and that kind of thing. So it was definitely like a hodgepodge. Like doing my taxes, I think like the first 5 years, it was an insane amount of paperwork for like little money. So it was just like, I was like, all right, this is
your accountant's looking at you.
Yeah. Like what is this? Like, this is insane.
From how many states?
Like, this is like, it's a bunch of like $1,500 like tax for, it's just like, it's crazy. And then the big shift is when the studio I'm the owner of now, I met or co-own. I met the guy who built it, and him and I just kind of hit it off. And he was like actual. He just built a studio because he wanted to do it. He just looked up how to do it and built a space and did a pretty good job of that. But I got to connect with him, and he was the first one to like, because he was an actual business person, showed me like how to run it, not how to run a studio, but like the process of running a business, like dealing with accounting and like keeping clean books, and like how to do like marketing that isn't just like going to a venue and like networking with an artist or a band. And it definitely changed my perspective from like like freelance engineer musician to, okay, how do I become a business owner, and think of things as like, it's not just me working every day. Okay, I have a shop now. How do I grow this space? And so that was a huge shift. But it definitely took,
That's awesome.
it probably took about 5 or 6 years to like introduce. And then even that, like when I had to figure out what payroll was, like, it was just like the stress. I mean, it's like, what? I have to do this? Oh my God. It's like, I just want to go to a space and record some stuff, but again, that is,
I love hearing that.
Yeah.
I love hearing that in your journey too, because it seems like so many entrepreneurs, we start out in this crazy like hustle of like, it's just, you're trying to stir something out of nothing, really.
Yeah.
And like 100%. And then, over time, a lot of us, we start to figure out, it needs to get tighter.
Yes.
And how do you,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say was the biggest, going from like just stirring up everything and getting more specialized and focused? What was the biggest struggle for you in that process?
Honestly, the biggest struggle was letting go of the gigging guitar player musician, because I knew I couldn't service my clients and be out in a venue until like 2 or 3 a.m. like 2 or 3 times a week. Like it definitely wears on you and gets exhausting. So it was reconciling, like, okay, it's not that I'm not a musician anymore. I'm not going out and gigging and playing with a bunch of musicians all the time. And so that was the biggest thing to get over, of like, no, I'm still a musician. I could, I still play all the time, but I'm just doing it in a different way. But realizing and like, I do know a few people who can keep the dual path going. I just couldn't, like, with the amount of work I had coming in, and it was just so different than what I was playing with. Like I'm, maybe it would have been different if I was like working with a bunch of rock bands in the studio and then going out and playing with a bunch of rock musicians, but, recording a bunch of different genres and then going out and playing like a jazz set, or going and like learning a bunch of like top 40 tunes. It was fracturing my mental space. And it's just, that was probably the biggest struggle. Yeah.
God, I feel like just hearing you say it, I feel like the chill of that, just because it is so true. There's so many things that I feel like people, you eventually have to let go, like as an artist, to really do the thing that you really want to do and make it great.
Yes.
But it's such a hard, I just saw, I mean, I was super focused, and I was scrolling through TikTok and I saw a guy who like it's like a doctor, and the guy sits down at the table, and he goes, you've been diagnosed as an artist. And he's like, you've been diagnosed as artistic. He goes, autistic? No, artistic.
Yeah.
And then he describes how he's like, you will have 50 different interests, and you will never really decide on one, like all this. And I'm just laughing, because it's like, damn, it's so true.
Yeah.
I think that's why artists sometimes struggle so much, but then when you can have that sense to focus, man, that's huge.
Yep.
When you made that decision, did you see like a turn real quick in the business?
Yeah, pretty aggressively. It was my business, like it again, it kind of went, my income from like 50% gigging, playing out, and then 50% studio to almost 100% all recording. And then it was just even more money, because my focus was then that I was able to like be rested and show up at the studio at like 8:30 with like a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, and like, okay, plot out my day, rather than like get in and just bull in a china shop. All right, what are we doing today? All right, we're gonna hook up these drums, let's go. Like, it's just, I was able to kind of pace a little bit, and then and then figure out and actually take time to okay, maybe we should update the website. And then I've always been terrible at social media, but okay, let's think through this, and reaching out to artists who, okay, figure out who's coming into town that I can meet with, and then also spending time like going out, like if I want to another engineer, another producer's in town, or that's in town, like going out and seeing music and just like hanging out, and just like having a little bit of a life, because I'm not having to rush from studio to gig, sleep for 4 hours, studio to gig, sleep for 4 hours. So that was right. But having the energy and the I try not to be too woo-woo, but like allowing the universe to kind of just like provide, okay, now here's these other things that are now available because you have the space to do this. Yeah,
man, That's huge.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's huge. When you're in the studio working with artists,
Mhm.
you know, we're talking about artists having 50 different interests, but
Yeah.
also all of us tend to, we can be maybe difficult. We have a vision, you know, whatever it is,
Sure.
you know, or maybe we think we're better than we actually are at the moment, those kind of things.
Sure.
What are some of your tools that you've learned along the way of getting the best out of an artist in the studio?
So to always be open. And by that, I mean, there's, cause I hear horror stories all the time where the engineer or producer is like really rude and like they tell the artist like, no, you have to do it this way. Like this is the right way to do it. I remember one of the first sessions I worked on, where I was like, no, this is how, okay, you know, I think it was a hip hop record. And like, I was like, no, we have to stack vocals this way. Or like, it was a very specific, like, cause I've seen it work this particular way. Artist is like not having it, whatever. And I was like, all right, fine. If that's the way you want to do it, let him do the thing. And then it ended up like doing really well. And so that was a very awesome lesson early on of like, okay, I'm probably not right. It's okay to not be right as an engineer. Like my job is to facilitate a creative process, and I need to do it in the best way possible and make sure the artist is comfortable performing well. If I have a suggestion, cool, I'll throw it in there if asked. And a lot of times the artists like they'll do a thing like and then ask me, and then I'll glad. But you have to let the people who are creating the thing actually create it. And I think the biggest thing I've learned is just creating a comfortable space for that to happen. I feel like it's the only job for an engineer, other than actually capturing it well, make sure nothing is distorting, all that fun stuff. But as far as being in the room, it's what energy can you set to then allow everyone to perform at their best. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Does it get blurry for you, producer versus engineer?
Yeah,
when you're in there?
My favorite thing is if I know the defined role. So if the artist is either going to be like self-producing, a lot of times because I'm a musician as well, like I'll contribute something as along the lines of producer, but I try to say as much in the engineer lane as I can. If I'm producing, that's when things can get a little murky, where I'm very thankful. Like I've some interns that are great and can sit in and like handle that side of it. But also as a producer,
so they're acting as engineer while you're able to help.
Yeah, I don't have to think about
of
Pro Tools. Yeah, I could just like sit back and like craft whatever I do. But I've also learned like there are only certain things I know I'm a good producer for. So like if people are just coming in for just general production, it's like, okay, well, we need to talk about the song and the sound. All right, I don't think I'm the good like producer for this. I can either link you with somebody, and they'll come in or whatever. I will engineer anything. But yeah, I learned like, I shouldn't be doing a lot of like hip hop production. That's not my thing. I know some people are phenomenal at it. And also just being objective with an artist because a lot of artists like to self-produce now, which is amazing. If they have the wherewithal to go through the process, but it's, but just helping them along and sonically getting things in, but it definitely can get murky and, just like, I think the idea of a one-stop shop, like there's a anytime I see a studio that's like, yeah, we'll engineer, produce, do your t-shirts, do your music video. I'm like, all right, you're going to do all four of those things really bad. Like it's not going to be great. Just cause you have a print shop doesn't mean you should. So yeah, I think it's definitely a thing of having that kind of separated and those roles defined.
Right.
And yeah, and like music itself it's a collaborative thing anyway, so it shouldn't be one person making every single call. The best things are when you have look at any record that wins a Grammy or any great record. Like there's a ton of names on that, unless you're Beck. Beck is like he makes the records where it's just like two people. Everybody else but it takes a a lot of creative minds to create great art.
Right. And it's interesting the producer piece and the self-produce aspect. I remember we were in the studio last January we worked with a producer named Josh Gleave, brilliant guy. And there was one point where we're literally laying down like some of the final like vocals, and we're still like arguing in the room about something, and there's like 15 ideas flying back and forth, and finally he just yells, "Everyone shut the fuck up."
Oh, I've had those moments.
Sit down.
Yeah.
And And it was one of those ahas where we're kind of dabbling in self-producing, mainly just because of the amount, like the frequency at which it seems like
Sure.
people, the way the fucking internet and everything works right now.
Yeah.
But even then, it's like having that outside perspective.
Yeah,
seems
absolutely.
to be so good and so clarifying.
Yeah, I recently started. I mean, I bill it all as like consulting, but we're at like a few people who are recording and producing at home or elsewhere, and they just need the other voice. Where I'm just like, cool, send me the tracks, give an hour of my time, or whatever. And then it's just a thing of like, it is that thing of an outside voice. It's just, again, you're just giving the bird's eye view. Because I mean, like when you're making a record, working on songs, you get so laser focused, and you kind of sometimes it's easy to miss the big picture. Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I even get that. Like if I'm working on a record, I get so obsessed with like, all right, I need to dial in the snare drum or whatever, and the vocalist is like, where are the harmonies? I'm like, oh, those are all muted. I'm sorry. Yeah, I completely forgot they were there. Yeah.
I love it. One day you talk about dialing snare sounds. One day we were writing, the drummer and I, we're started at like 10 a.m. We have like a whole day where we do like 12-hour day. And bass player comes in at like 3-4 in the afternoon. It's like, what you guys done today?
Yeah.
And we're like, we found a really cool snare sound.
I mean, it's important. It's a very important thing. Yeah.
And what's hilarious is all we were doing was making demos. We were literally just making demos to send to the producer who was going to do much better than us.
Sure.
And we were like, why the fuck? Why did we just?
But you get on that obsessive tip, and it's just like you got to figure it out. Yeah.
Well, and it feels like the process on all those, because there's days, we'll write a song or, try to dial in a snare or whatever. And it's like, even sometimes just the back and forth is helpful. It's like we learn something of how to work better together, or I understand why you value this tonality, those kind of things.
Sure.
That's interesting. You talked about the consultant piece on it, because that's one piece, even as we're, like I said, dabbling, we haven't fully committed to it at this point, but trying to see if we can pull self-producing off, still wanting to have a consultant.
Sure.
I didn't call it that, but the same producer we worked with,
we've
talked with him about like, hey, can we still bounce out? Cause I trust his input, you know, and we feel like we need it. Are you seeing that more and more?
Yeah,
like
it's absolutely. So it's starting to become a thing. So it kind of started with during the pandemic. A lot of people were doing like live streaming of either like rehearsals as shows, or venues were starting to do like live stream again, because they're trying to like, well, we can't have people in the space, but they're still trying to provide a good content, and they realize like their board mix doesn't go to stream very well. Churches would do the same thing, and so they
the board feed can be
it's
so unforgiving.
Yeah, of course. And so but there's a lot of technology where like you can split off and basically send to like Logic or Pro Tools. You can have like a mixed template so it's like you're in the studio and you could dial in a really awesome sounding thing, syncs to the video, and then goes out to broadcast. So I started getting calls from a few clients that or a few people that lived like all throughout the US, like, hey, can you build me, this is what's going on, can we send you our tracks and build templates? So I started building the session templates for just for those live streams. And then I periodically, like, these people would hit me up again to like either refresh that or, hey, now we're recording this, we're using your template. And then I would help them kind of do that. And I realized like, oh, this is a whole other thing where I'm just essentially just giving advice, where like if they caught me on a good day, I'll hop on the phone for an hour and talk, like, oh yeah, do this kind of reverb for the vocals, it's going to sound amazing. And I was like, oh wait, this is a business thing here.
Right.
And then I would be getting people would send me mixes of stuff they would be working on at home, like, hey, can I get your opinion on this? And like, especially if sometimes like it's not a big deal, but like if I'm busy with paying clients, it was just like I can't listen to this right now. I can't even listening to it, like I need to focus on these other projects, but realizing, okay, there's a need here. So I just started sending off like a consultant form of like, okay, what do you want? Here's the file, here's the time, we can hop on a call. And so, yeah, I've started to do that. I have a few clients that do that a month. And, again, it's the thing of just, again, as a business, like you're just trying to figure out ways to, use your time wisely and then like still utilize, your skill set. So yeah, it's
That
definitely
sounds like such a cool way to adapt to in a incredibly changing environment. I'm constantly
yeah,
trying to keep up with AI, like and what that means for like because we're trying to step into the licensing world
sure,
currently, and but then I'm like seeing some AI stuff where I'm like, well, shit, you know. But honestly, I use AI now daily, even while I'm in Logic. I use Logic just
sure,
because that's where I started.
yeah,
But
it's great.
while I'm in Logic, I'm constantly using AI there now
Yep,
too. So it's like it's an interesting way to partner. But back to the idea of consulting
hmm
these, building these templates, what you're doing, I think it sounds like an incredible way to adapt in the current environment. I'm
yeah,
curious how, like, what do you see the next year or two as bands, you know, and artists have the potential?
yeah,
I say potential because there's a whole other level of like if you want it good or not, but
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah,
they have the potential to record at home in
sure.
their bedrooms, you know. Um, how do you see it affecting your business? What do you see? What are the other opportunities that you see in that too?
So it has been a long standing thing, and since I've been doing this professionally, so I started working full time or started like post college at like 2009. That's when like the world broke down with the housing crisis, financial crisis, like every major
Oh
studio
wow.
closing. So I've been in a world where like people are trying to figure out how to cut costs. I think
Mhm.
like for as far as a full band record, I mean I was probably 3 years in before I was from scratch tracks to very end dealing with a project. I've always been like working with people who are like, oh, they just need me to like come into a studio and track drums or edit. They couldn't really edit. So I've always been kind of like a utility person for a lot of clients.
Mhm.
So that's kind of always been a thing. Um, I think now it's becoming more collaborative rather than like doing pieces of. I'm doing a lot of projects where people are coming in, mapping out things, doing scratch tracks or home, and then coming in and there's not everyone has a great home setup. People don't realize they don't have a home setup because they don't know like what a good room is supposed to sound like. So like once they come record vocal, like I have an artist now that she will record all of her backgrounds and ad libs and stuff at home, and then she comes in and will do
Mhm.
lead vocals and kind of these bigger things that need to sound a little more high end.
Mhm.
And then even hearing the difference, sometimes it's not a big deal if like the backgrounds aren't as great as the lead vocal quality, but like
Right.
you can hear it. Like there is a difference, going, if you have your $1,000 mic at home going into your interface versus like something that's like a $12,000 microphone going through like a Neve preamp
Right.
and a Mag EQ and this crazy vocal chain.
With someone who knows how to set it all up correctly.
Totally. No, and it's definitely a thing. So I think for me it's always been collaborative. When I would talk to like a little bit older engineers who have been in the business like even 10 years more than me, like that idea, like they would just like not take the project at all and not take the sessions, and they would end up losing out
Mm.
on things all the time. And like there's so many projects where like I was only asked to record the drums or asked to record the vocals, and then I ended up mixing and mastering the record because they enjoyed working with me and saw what I had to offer. So I think it's still being flexible. Not if somebody's recording home recording is bad, not like making fun, like not making fun of them or making them feel bad for it, just like being like, hey, this is cool, like maybe try this, or like and just being trying to be as kind as possible
Mm.
to that end, just because it's such a vulnerable thing to record, and you're sending your art off to essentially be evaluated, so it's being user friendly. I think AI is an interesting thing. There are laws that were passed recently and have been being placed in effect where how people are making money with AI. So there's a lot of
Mhm.
distributors that if your song gets flagged as using AI, it's now no longer able to recoup money.
Yeah.
Spotify just finished suing somebody who's creating a bunch of AI music, like releasing a ton of it under a different
And they're
artist names.
just pumping
But yeah, and so they're like,
the
oh, cool.
Spotify fee with
Yeah, and then it's like, all right, so now we're going to sue you for $10 million because it was just like you didn't do anything. And so like
Right.
the Recording Academy no longer accepts anything that was using AI. Like they just pulled, I think, 2 Drake songs that were submitted that had AI. Like those are no longer eligible.
Actual Drake songs or someone.
No, so like a producer for Drake like ended up like using AI
Oh,
to make the track, and so they just pulled They
Really?
yeah, so they pulled it from eligibility.
So I'm currently like using AI stuff as
Mhm.
far as like mastering those kind of things.
Sure.
Is it also that?
No, so it's more
Oh,
it's
so
just the
it's the
creation.
creative
Yeah.
piece.
Mhm.
Okay.
And
Which makes sense because
so,
it's
yeah.
like, man, come on.
No, and like I have no problem with people using. I think it's great if you're using it for song starter ideas or yeah, because I know Logic, I haven't messed with it yet, but like they're like AI engine now for like AI drummer or AI bass player. Like if you just don't have I don't really know what I want here, and you just have AI
Mhm.
figured out, and then you can rework it later. Awesome. I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Right.
But it's still like I think it's on the onus of the distribution companies and the sync libraries that are like, hey, we're not going to accept this if it's not an actual performer. I think is amazing. Like you're not going to
Yeah.
you can't monetize something that wasn't created by a person. And, it's
Yeah,
what,
especially because it's going to be a derivative
Yep.
of other, because all it is
yeah,
pulling from other
just
people's
data.
works,
Yep.
at that point.
Yep.
That's interesting.
Mhm.
And so my concern with AI with licensing is that are there people out there that are going to just type in, I forget which one I saw, but I saw this website where you can type in basically like I want a hip hop song with blah blah blah, and I guess it kicks you out a song. I'm concerned that a lot of licensing opportunities might be missed now because of that. But with what you're saying, it sounds like there is a industry push for people to still value the work of artists.
And I mean it's now put into contracts. So there was a SAG Screen Actors Guild strike like a year or two ago, and a lot of it was based off of all the AI stuff and like
right.
face. So all of those laws are protective now, and now because I mean it's sad that there's no like overall arcing like musician recording artist union, but essentially those that is what these new laws in place are protecting. Are protecting these yes, and so like for music and TV shows, because those things are already existing for actors, now it's also applied to the music.
You gave me chills again. I'm excited. Because like that's what I still know we want to keep going at this because I love like, dude, I forget to eat when I'm writing. It'll be like I forget to eat, I forget to drink, and I just want to write and write. But I was like, damn it, did we come in too late?
No. Well,
it sounds like there's still a lot of opportunity.
Tons. And like I mean, as far as like sync licensing and stuff like that, I mean, there's so much content being made on the video end. Like they all need music, so it's just a matter of networking and doing all that. But it's I think it's a thing of especially with AI, it's just a thing of like it just needs to figure out and be regulated, just like anything. It's like it's just a new idea. All right, now how is this going to be used? It's because again, when AI it got proposed, like, oh, this is what AI can do, everyone's freaking out. But then it's like, okay, but now how are the systems that are in place? Until there's the singularity and all corporate models go away, we still have people in place like, no, we're not doing this. So it's until robots really take over, and then music will be the last thing on anyone's mind.
Right.
But until that point, I think
when we're living in like Terminator.
Yeah.
Wasn't it Kurzweil that, which is so funny that he's so like, that name is so powerful in music as well, but wasn't he the one talking about singularity being like 2042 or
I
something
think
like
so.
that?
Yeah, something
yeah. Sounds like something he would say.
Sure, yeah, sounds about right.
Leave it to a keyboardist.
Yep,
dude, that is exciting. And what's interesting hearing your story. So you get started when the economy is just tanking.
Oh yeah,
and the world just kind of woke up to like, hey, this world can be kind of rough, right? And yet you seem to have such a just very nimble and creative like mindset in business, which is really inspiring. And this just in general, positive like attitude, like outlook. Is that something you have just always had, like even when you were a little kid, or did you have to cultivate that yourself?
That was definitely cultivate. I've always been like, I really don't take things seriously. I will make fun of, not in a mean way, but I just don't take things seriously at all. Like, I mean, there's many times of like me and my little brother being asked to leave a church service because we're just being disruptive. Just like whatever, like everything should be funny. Everything is funny. But no, it was definitely, I kind of have the moniker of, I take my craft very seriously. I don't take myself very seriously. And I don't take people around me like, like there's so much terrible in the world. We're all still here and moving, which is amazing. So I tend to try to keep as even keel as I can. I definitely get, especially if I have a lot of projects and like being hit in all directions, I get unbelievably stressed. But I try to keep it as even keel and just keep a constant state of motion and just keep moving forward. I think, I was okay because I became all these studios closing and being a musician. I was like, well, I'm just going to be I was okay being the starving artist and just like, I can live on very minimal and just for a long time. And I remember like when I started like making a like solid livable income, like I was just like, okay, this is, like having the first year of a lot of money, just spending it like crazy, just again, not being aware of like, maybe it's not like I'm not going to be making crazy amount of money every week, so maybe I shouldn't do this. And so like, and then like you figure out how to save and all that, and then figuring out, I think as a business owner in the music world, is certainly figuring out how to keep a consistent, steady income. That's a huge thing. But yeah, I try to stay as just even keeled and moving forward, and I tend to find like that kind of like allows me to live more comfortably. And just definitely more at peace. Like I'm not unbelievably stressed that I'm not going to be able to pay bills or whatever, just because like I just keep moving forward with projects, things keep coming in, and just trying to stay steady.
That's awesome, man. I love it. Yeah, it really is inspiring because, like I said, that's something. Even just your outlook and the information you're sharing too with the AI in the future of music. Like I feel more excited. Like I was still excited just because I love this, but then like that outlook is really cool. And just hearing how you like shifting into this consultant role when needed, and then also providing value. Like that's what I hear in there, where you're not just trying to extract the value, you're trying to provide value to people. And it's like, okay, you just want me to do drums? Cool.
Yeah,
and then,
absolutely.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
And I've definitely done that too, where it's like I've worked with someone where I only needed a thing, but the relationship was so good that it's like the next time I needed it, I came to them, and then I'm like, hey, could you do this, this, and this too? You know, and that grows.
Well, and also they're going to like, you give them a positive, they're going to grow. They're going to, help you grow your business. They're going to tell other people about you. Like, it's just going to be constant. Like, I think I just started doing or getting into like advertising like we have another studio now, another engineer. So I'm starting to like deal with like, like ads for the studio and all that stuff. I don't think I've ever advertised. It's always been word of mouth. And I think it's a heavy thing. If you treat people right, like they're going to keep coming back and keep your name out in the world.
Yeah. So. And I work in a band that does like all private events. Like it's not my main band, Run With It, but it's a different band where I lead. They have like franchise bands.
Oh, gotcha. I know.
One of the franchise
kind of
things.
Yeah.
It's a really cool thing what they're building. But they brought in this person who does these huge events. Like minimum budget is 100,000. It goes all the way up to $1 million just for like one event, you know, kind of deal. And she was saying at that level, she's like, at that level, I literally am all word of mouth. She's like, because you break into this client, friends group, and you earn their trust because you did an incredible job. And next thing you know, you got everybody's business.
100%. Like it's a hard thing to tell people, but it is very much, it's like, it's all just like getting in the right circles. It's huge. Yeah.
That's amazing. If there's someone out there listening right now and they want to get into engineering, producing, what advice would you give them right now?
I think there's no better time to get into any field, just because the amount of information out there is so vast. Like YouTube wasn't a thing when I was going through school. Like I'm amazed with like, you could literally just type in anything. You could find an expert on it and have them talk about like, even
it's
like
insane.
Yeah. Like LinkedIn has like their education portal where like, okay, you want to know about a topic? Here's 4 experts and takes 3 hours of your time and you're going to learn a ton. So I think there's a lot that you can learn on your own. I think the biggest advice is find another engineer or a studio in your area and just see if you can sit in on sessions or even meet with every once in a while. Like I work with a program called the Recording Connection, where if people can't do like the 4-year school, it's essentially just like an apprenticeship with lessons. But I meet people all the time where like if they're really not just like, I want to sit in on a session, I'm like, okay, I could care less about that. But like, hey, I've done this, I've kind of got this figured out, I don't really know how that works, and if I could tell they're hungry, like, yeah, please sit in. And then, you know, especially if a client's not in while I'm working, like, feel free to ask questions. And like, I think that's the biggest thing. But yeah, I think it's just finding somebody you can apprentice with is I think the biggest advice. And then just always be open, just be as green as possible. And then if you're in a room with another artist and engineer, like, be quiet and listen to what people are saying, listen to how people are communicating, listen to what's going on, whether you like it or not. It could not, you know, you could hate the style of music. I had an intern once, where like I essentially fired him for this, but like I was just tuning vocals, which is not the most fun thing to sit in on. The client was here, so he like threw on his AirPods and started listening to other music. And I was like, nope, out. Like, it's it's just like, no. But I think it's finding people that you can apprentice and sit with. And I think that's the biggest thing. And, you know, there's tons of different ways to learn engineering and production. There's schools, there's like, again, workshops you can go to. But I think being able to see what the environment really is, to know if it's you. Like, I see people all the time, like, oh, I want to get engineering and producing, and they cannot stand being in a studio. Like, okay, this is not for you. Go in the live world. There's tons of things in the live world, you know, and then they thrive doing the live band thing, which is like awesome. But it's like, oh, if you have a hard time being in a room with no windows, listening to music all day, like, it's going to be
hours on.
This is going to be a tough run for you.
Yeah. Yeah, it does seem like you do have to love it. I remember being in the studio, well, even this past year when we went, where it's just like, you go outside in the afternoon, you're like, oh yeah, that's what
daylight
looks
like.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, you gotta be built for it.
Yeah, dude.
What was the name of that program you were talking about?
It's like, it's called Recording Connection.
Okay.
Well, it's the Recording and Film Connection. So they actually have, it's a school out of Los Angeles, but they do recording, music business. I think they do like culinary arts now. There's a film school. Wow. There's a bunch of different things, but the idea is, all right, instead of going to a 4-year university, you know, they have like weekly lessons. You sit in with somebody in your field and you basically learn hands-on, which for some people it's great. I've had a few people that like, that's just not, like, they would benefit more from a traditional classroom, you know, because everyone learns differently. But it's definitely an interesting, like, if you want an alternative to like a 4-year program.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I have some friends who have been doing like the Berkeley online stuff as well, and really getting a lot from it and starting to fly with like the production. And
nice.
I was like, man, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Well, last 2 questions
of
the podcast. So for the first one, right now in your life, how would you describe living a great life?
So it's something I'm constantly working on. It's having, because my schedule is so inconsistent. It's so like, I'll either be here for 18 hours a day, like cramming projects, or it's just, I don't know. It's just dealing with the chaos of like a 9 to 5 schedule, which is ultimately, I never wanted to have a 9 to 5 job, but that means I have a 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. job. That's a whole other entrepreneur thing. People will figure that one out. But I'm trying to get better at, leaving this, like, if I have a work day, scheduling it in a way where I can, like, if it's going to be a late day, I have the morning off. I can go get a coffee. I can sit by a body of water and just sit, maybe hang out with a friend. Or like, if it's an early day, make sure I'm out enough to, like, okay, I'm going to go meet some people for dinner or drinks, or, you know, find a way to have a social life, have a life outside of the studio. Because I think if you're in whatever profession you're in, if you're only doing that one thing, you're not living a life. If you're not reading a book, if you're not engaging in an art that's outside of what you do, like, I love, like, there's a little art house theater in town. I love going to see like weird independent movies. I'll go find an art gallery, like things that I don't even, like, I could not do those things, but it lets me like appreciate that. But like going to events that are outside of like I hate going to like music, like industry event things, because like I want to go to like things that are like if I could find somebody who like has an invite to like a chef's table where it's gonna be a bunch of cooks making some stuff, and like, yeah, like let's do the idea is finding ways to get some life experience, making time to travel. Definitely gotten better with that over the years, where like I will essentially, I'll take like I just got back into town from doing this, but like I took a week off, like just like no location, either like just driving to a place or flying to a place, not really making a plan, and then experiencing whatever city or town that you go to. Just I think that's the thing, is like you have to build something outside of the craft. And I think that makes you like, like if you're going through a heavy depression cycle, like, are you doing things outside of your day job? Because if you're not, like, that's your depression. Like, and so it's just I think kind of setting boundaries and like allowing yourself, to not just be in one space I think is crucial.
I think that's such a huge lesson, especially for artists, because we can just latch onto something, like I said, where it's like I'll realize I'll be right in this office and forget that I need to eat, those kind of
all
things,
the time.
Because you get so locked in.
Mm-hmm.
I remember there's a season where I was writing. I was doing probably like 2 songs a day, just going intense, like 2-3 months. It was a really good like lesson of growth. We actually got our EP out of that season.
Hell yeah.
But
awesome.
after 3 months of that, I was just pissed off and angry all the time. And I swore everything I wrote was shit, where every once in a while I'd get excited, but it just hit this thing of like, it's downhill from here. And I called my friend and producer, this guy, Josh Cleve, and I'm telling him like, oh, man, what I've been doing. He's like, dude, you need to walk away, get your kids, and go to the park. He's like, and don't do music for like a few days. Just stop for a second. Sure. And I think the biggest thing is like in this creative life, how like creativity is connecting different things together.
Sure.
And if we're only so micro focused, like we have nothing to connect. You said the culinary, like going to a beautiful meal and seeing someone present something like that can inspire cool things.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah, man.
I love it. Well, the last question for you, how would you describe creating great things?
I think things that are, let's see, I'm gonna try the broad part of that is it can either be something that you're creating authentically internally. So, meaning you're not, okay, let me try to write a love song. It's like you have the feeling of love, so you're authentically putting that down on paper. I think that's the difference. And then I think then it's also creating a reflection of the world. So if you're talking about something about like world events or something that's happening culturally, being able to authentically put whatever your voice is through that. Like if you have an isolated, like say if I don't know, great example of this, but like if you're trying to write something that's outside of your experience, like there's no part of that that's going to be an authentic expression, and it's going to be felt. It's like, okay, this is just a song about this, or this is a movie about this. Like nobody knows what it's not inherent to that experience. So I think authenticity is what makes something great. And then persevering and seeing an idea through, because I think it's really easy to stop if you feel like something is terrible, or if you feel whatever, if an idea gets lost or convoluted. I think it's important to keep whatever your initial focus was of why you created the thing in front of you. When I'm doing productions with the artist, I'll like when we have the first conversation of whatever the song is, whatever the album is going to be, whatever. I kind of write out, okay, what is our general theme and vibe, and almost it's just like a mission statement. And so every once in a while, if I feel like, or the artist, like if something's like not feeling well, all right, let's look back at that mission statement. How are we staying true to this? So I think creating something great comes from like being authentic to either the idea, your creative spirit, whatever the flow state of creating brings in. I think it's just being true to that.
That's awesome, man. Mm-hmm. Well, let people know how they can connect with you.
Sure. So we have our Instagram is at Soul Haven Project. Our website, soulhavenstudios.com. Me and my engineering partner are going to be doing a lot more posting content of stuff happening in the studio, doing live Q&As, like Instagram lives, that kind of thing, and just finding ways to connect with artists who are just maybe do not have the budget, anything like that, to be in the studio, but just have questions. But I think that's probably the best way to connect, is just the Instagram, and then, you know, on our website.
That's awesome. Well, dude, that was awesome. I feel more inspired. Thank
Good.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to the Live and Create podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe and leave a comment or a review.
The Live and Create podcast.